company dedicated to enhancing leaders' ability to harness and optimize trust as a strategic business asset. We like to say that trust is a strategic business asset.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I definitely do. Because I think that puts us in the category of slowing down to speed up, which I'm kind of contradicting myself here because, I say I'm quick to act, but when it comes to people and making sure that there's trust built in forming high performing teams, in my mind, it's mission critical to do this out of the gates. So before there's time for anybody to formulate in their brain that person X doesn't like me because they showed these three behaviors, you want to get in front of that so you know that person X is who they are as a human, and this is where they may be coming from because their psychological makeup is a little bit different than mine. And just because they're not behaving exactly like I'm behaving, that doesn't mean they're a bad person and have malintent. And I think the solve for that is to always bring your new teams together, to have hygiene around that and have conversations. And Amy, I know you've led a lot of those conversations where you're talking about more of who you are as a leader, who you are as a person, the things that really motivate you. And once you can really listen and hear all of that, it just creates, speed to action because people are not getting mired down in, I'll call it maybe political aspects that really don't matter and quite frankly probably aren't even true.
Mm.
But you slowing down to speed up and really building that trust of a team. But then I think you need to continue on as the team changes, as the team builds or it morphs, because no team stays stagnant forever, and continuing to do that work.
Well, I've always been so impressed at the dedication and commitment you've had to any team that you've built. Immediately, that is one of the things you do, and I think what I've seen in that decision that you've made is that trust does accelerate business because oftentimes there'll be super smart people in the room, but nobody will listen
Mm-hmm.
because of maybe the way they come across or what have you. And what you do is really cut through that by allowing people to get to know each other first, and then
Yeah.
people want to listen. And then
And
you
it seems super basic. But I had a MBA that's rotating through, right? And I'm like, listen, most of this stuff I'm going to tell you right now isn't what you learned in business school. It's what you learned in kindergarten.
Mm.
I mean, it's like how you treat people, how extend, do, favors for people. I mean, I can remember a day. I mean, I was a brand leader, and the other brand leader, who's still a friend to this day, came into the office and was like, "Oh my God, I haven't done my development goals. They're due." And I was like, "Oh yeah, 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 I have mine." And then I was like, take mine. Like, just take them and tweak them and then figure it out and turn them in on time, and like, we're done. I could have taken, I don't know why this example is coming to my mind, but I could have taken that. I could have been like, well, my goals will be in on time and you're just going to have to, suffer. Whereas, I mean, think of the relationship, today. I mean, how many ever years later, just based on the fact that I came through in the clutch on like a simple thing to help somebody out instead of kind of, watching them fail.
Yeah, yeah. And I see how, with AI and just the advancement of technology and all the information that's going to be available, what you do and what you bring to the table in terms of building trust, collectively harnessing the intelligence in the room in a way that, trust is the foundation. That's going to be the differentiator because the amount of information everybody can get is becoming ubiquitous. It's all there, but how you operationalize it, how you allow people to have conversation, that's where you really excel with your superpower of trusting, empowering, but certainly setting a limit. You don't allow people to get away with anything and everything, but you certainly allow the flourishing of individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems like a good recipe for building social capital. Like you
Yes.
said, yeah, you came through in the clutch. It may have been a small thing, but that will be remembered, and that will flow, and and it may end up being like you're not in control, but they could say something to someone else that matters for you down the line for getting something done and getting done at the right time. So there's
Absolutely.
dividends. Yeah.
Well, one of the questions that often comes up in working with, like we were just discussing with high performing teams, is that the trust in you as a leader is different from the trust in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so you are the face of the organization to many people. I'm curious how you look at that, how you describe that, and maybe help people build more trust within the organization, or maybe not. Maybe it's not appropriate.
Yeah, no. I think there's a phenotype, at different organizations that fits with what the organization has to offer that particular individual. And, right now at the organization that I'm in, the phenotype is, do you want stability? Do you want a long-term career? Do you want to contribute to a patient community that has high unmet need and have a series of resources offered to you? And if that's what you want, then this is the career for you. Now, if you want to take a high risk and, money is the ultimate thing for you, where risk reward, and that's your personality or the point in time in your career that you want that, then that's the job for you. So sometimes you really have to tell the story of the organization so people know what they're aligned to, but also can look internally to say, this is for me or this isn't for me. I mean, that's basically it. And then when you can get to that euthymia, I feel like that's where the magic happens, because people, if they appreciate and have gratitude towards their organization and the opportunities that it affords them, no matter what the organization is. It can be a startup, it could be a mid-cap, it could be a large organization, but that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, there's so much good there. Just in terms of, you don't get to have that conversation with people unless you've built the trust that you've built, because you care about your people.
Mhm.
And so the conversation is able to be had. And then the second thing I love, and Tony, you chime in too, just in terms of,
Mhm.
trust is a choice. And often I hear people say, well, I can't trust them because of XYZ. But is there an opportunity to look at things differently? And I think what you just described is sort of, again, putting it back in their court to say, you can decide, you can choose.
Yeah.
And once you choose, be grateful for what you are choosing
Yeah.
and keep that path. So,
Yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
think we do live in a free enterprise system. So there's choice. I mean, we recently just experienced a lot of turnover, anticipated turnover. And in doing that, you want to self-reflect, like, hey, what am I doing that, like, is there something better that, I personally can be doing as a leader to, retain individuals? And there's always something better you can do. But I do believe there's this notion of, time and place of what's right for the individual at that time. And sometimes people just, their phenotype is not placed correctly for what the organization has to offer.
mhm.
Like a large 200-year plus organization is not offering you the same thing as a startup that is just gotten funding and is going to launch one product. It's just not. But hey, if that makes people happy, that makes me happy, because I've
Mhm.
done that too. I've been down that journey, right?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what about specific to your industry, your very specific rare disease pharmaceuticals?
Mhm.
How have you seen trust play the biggest difference in your different relationships with different stakeholders? Because it could be with the customers, right? The patients, it could be with your employees, it could be with board, could be other organizations that you partner with or compete against.
Yeah, I can probably go on with that one for days, but I'll start with the advocacy groups that I've worked with through the years and the relationship there and building trust with them. And as a result of that, being able to, work with the patient communities in the best way possible. I don't do as much of that in this current role, but I have done a lot of that in the past. And having that experience, I think, and or those relationships, and knowing where the patient is coming from or their families are coming from and all the pain points that they're suffering, can help you to be that much better of a leader, to try your best to solve some of those things for them and really help them along the way. So I can kind of dive into that one. But
Mm.
working in different global roles, I think building trust across the globe is not necessarily the easiest task. In studying different cultures and being able to kind of flex your personality. I've gotten the feedback sometimes that I come off as too American. I'm like, well, I'm American. I don't, I don't know what else to tell you. I'll try to. I mean, I guess I have a mix of heritage. We all do in the United States, but I do pride myself in building trust across cultures. In addition, trying to understand the culture, approach it the right way. Make sure to formulate the relationship, obviously, first before getting into business. And I think that's boded well over time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex industry. Every industry has its complexities and different stakeholders. And then you in your role, you move from one group to another on a daily basis, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And so you have to readjust, recalculate. Recalibrate? How am I to show up here for these particular people?
Yes.
Mhm.
I had a boss one time that told me that, sometimes you're, part businesswoman, sometimes you're part actor. And I won't say I'm perfect at it. I'm not. But I will say it's something I continuously work on, is how to align to, how other people approach things and how to align to different, company cultures the best way possible, to build trust, to then get things done.
Well, on that note of, building trust to get things done, one of the questions, we're kind of shifting here a little bit, but I want to ask this question about, how do you love your colleagues? And love is being deep and unselfish in your commitment to someone else, um,
Mhm.
putting your interests before your own. So I'm just curious, how does that show up for you in terms of loving your colleagues? And it's not a term we often hear in the business world, but I do think it exists, because I think there are people that do put others' needs before their own.
Yeah. I have an example. When I came back to this particular role, I had a business underneath me that was given to somebody else in order for that individual to develop. It was a smaller business. And, in hindsight, I could have really dug in and put my claws in and be like, I just got here. I was asked to run this business, but I also knew, this individual really wanted this to grow and to develop and to give them more scope. And in my mind, I'm like, this is the right thing to do. And so I think that's an example. I guess I've never thought about that as love. Like, I love my kids, but um, it definitely was an unselfish move. You know, I could have behaved very differently, but I really dug in, like, and thought about my brain. My brain power told me this is the right thing to do, but my heart also said that this is the right thing to do for the organization and for the individual.
And just maybe a follow-up question to that. Do you feel as though that sort of approach is used frequently or infrequently in the business world?
You know, I've seen it go both ways, of course, and I don't know if I can like add a frequency ratio to it per se. But what I can say is I would rather hedge on showing your colleagues love, and building rapport and respect than to acting the other way, because I've never seen that turn out well.
Mm.
I mean, that then factors into your reputation, that then factors into how other people perceive you. And it's just not a good look.
Just from my own view of what I've seen, and you'll recall Stefan years ago used to say culture is love.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time getting my head wrapped around that, years and years ago. But the more I sit with it and the more I look around and hear stories like you just described, it really is that aspect of love of, putting someone else's needs first. And, the bigger person can do that. And
Yeah. When you really show love, and this is probably will surprise a lot of people, or maybe it won't, is when you have to do a RIF, when you have to do a restructuring, which I've had to do several throughout the years. Maybe had to do is the wrong word. I did. And when you are talking to those individuals and how you handle the transition, with grace for each person, and how they should know that although this is happening, their contributions to the organization are valued. They're not forgotten. And that I tend to always offer myself up to the best that the lawyers will allow, as a mentor, a guide, and somebody that can help them through what is a tough time, right? And that is, I guess you could say that is love. I don't know if people listening will agree with me, but
I would agree with you.
How I go about it.
Yeah, you're not in full control in that situation, and the lawyers are telling you these are your guardrails. But you want to care for them and show care for them. That's who you are, and so it's hard when you don't have, as a leader, the less control you have and the less information or accurate or timely information you have, the harder it becomes to give of yourself, or to have others' interests before your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
On a similar topic, we talk about love, but also joy can show up at work, right? God forbid that we have joy while we're at work. How do you find joy in your work, right? And we're defining joy as perhaps the elation of right relation or relationship. It's a consequence of kind of the right fit at the right time, like where your identity and the experience you're having they get fit perfectly.
Like your flow.
Mm-hmm.
When it's all, well, I think my current boss, he does a lot of that, like to try to bring joy to all of us on our leadership team. And just last week, for instance, we started our meeting because there were, obviously some contentious things happening. Everybody's under a lot of pressure. We're baking our financial plan, and he had us go around and talk about what we were grateful for, and just gratitude. And so I think just that was a good practice that he displayed that really can bring joy to what you're doing, because if you really ground yourself in what you're grateful for, then everything else kind of gets a little easier.
It's a great example. It's interesting how we start meetings with joy or celebration, how that sets our brain differently to start and engage in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
If we
I know, I'm going to take a page from his playbook on that one and implement it with my team.